A federal court in Colorado will hear a petition for a writ of habeas corpus for Tina Peters today. What this is not is a motion for immediate release. Not yet. What the court will hear, according to the Gateway Pundit, are arguments on whether Tina Peters' limited petition for a writ of habeas corpus will be allowed to proceed or be dismissed outright. Now, the Mesa County clerk is months into a 9-year prison sentence for doing her job, essentially, in preserving election records that reveal election manipulation and fraud. Hence the deep state's campaign against this Gold Star mother and American hero. Now, shortly into her prison stay, Peters texted this SOS, expressing fear for her safety while in prison and her welfare in jail. Back in May, President Donald Trump pinned this Truth Social, highlighting Peters' plight and describing his directive to the DOJ to assist in securing her release. And a personal friend of the president's is on the case. Mr. Peter Tickton is in Colorado, where he will represent Peters today, and he joins us now. Hello, Peter. It's good to see you. This is possibly some good news for the relief of Tina Peters, yes?
I'm not expecting any bad news today. I think that the magistrate judge in the federal court, which is where we are, even though she was tried and convicted in a state court, but we're moving the federal court for a writ of habeas corpus, which is basically give us the body. Okay, that's what we're basically saying. And in this regard, what we're looking for is give us the body until the appeal is resolved. Then we'll have time after the appeal to do this in a different way in the event that the appeal goes against us. But I really don't see that happening. The way that this case was tried was such an aberration and so far from the way that you would expect anything in America to be, that I'm confident in regards to the fact that the appeal will ultimately be resolved in our favor. These convictions have to be set aside.
Yeah, so just to clarify, for now, you are hoping to secure her release upon appeal, correct? That's what you're seeking.
That's what we're seeking. Today is not the day that the court will do that, though. Today is the day that the court is questioning whether or not whether we're allowed to go forward. One of the things that's required in order to proceed with a petition for a writ of habeas corpus is that we need to be able to show that all of the state remedies, all of the possible ways that we could have gotten relief in the state court have already occurred. There's been an extinction of all of these ways of getting our rights. And once those are all gone, then at that point, we're in a position to be able to seek relief from the federal court. Well, obviously, we are still arguing in the state court in the appeal that Tina Peters didn't get her rights. I mean, she didn't get the right to defend herself, for God's sakes. And also what she was doing was obeying the federal law. And there's something called the supremacy clause. When you have a difference between a federal statute and a state statute, especially regarding federal elections, the federal law is what is supreme over the state law. So in these regards, these are issues that still have to be heard on appeal. So there's a question as to whether or not we can go ahead with the petition for writ of habeas corpus when these things haven't been done yet, when there still is relief to be sought in the state court. Except we're not looking for that kind of relief in regard to the full-out case. We're just looking at it from the point of view of getting bail pending appeal. Get her out of there. I mean, if we're going to win this thing ultimately, why should she suffer if she's innocent, which she is? I mean, this is an innocent lady. And that's why there's so many people, half of America, understand her to be the hero that she is. And so we really are doing everything that we possibly can to get her out of prison, other than taking a bulldozer to the building. We're doing everything, let's say, legally that we can possibly do to get her out.
How much is Trump's Department of Justice assisting in this effort?
Well, they're concerned. I mean, I'm in contact with them, and I'm not sure exactly what is going to transpire in the event that we're not successful in being able to get her out, because the president's been very clear that he's ordered his agencies to do what must be done in order to get her out of prison. That there's problems in terms of staffing and so on in regard to the DOJ. You know, I expect to get better help with them. Well, let's see what happens here. If the magistrate judge, not today, but I'm going to be asking him to speed things up. I mean, you have to understand, this lady isn't sitting alone in a prison cell. She's in a population that include very, very dangerous people. She's among literally murderers, and these aren't necessarily reasonable people. Some of the people she's with aren't educated and have horrible tempers, and bad things happen there. Okay, this isn't a place where a 70-year-old lady who supposedly committed some kind of white collar crime it should be. In the men's world, you have maximum security, medium security, minimum security, and camp. But in the women's world, it's a different story. And they've taken Tina Peters and put her in a very precarious situation. And all we can do is pray for her safety every day. But she has to live every minute of every day in this kind of a situation, which is horrible.
And you know, it's part of it's that they're trying to make an example of Tina. They've made that abundantly clear from what the remarks of the judge, and what he had to say at her sentencing, to, you know, putting her in that general population. I mean, they're trying to send a clear message to anyone else who would try to question elections or do their job. I want to touch on something you said, because it did catch my attention. I have heard that behind the scenes, the president himself has been very frustrated at the lack of movement in securing Tina's release. He's upset that people have to keep coming to him and saying, well, what are we going to do about Tina Peters? You mentioned that some of this might be due to staffing problems in the DOJ. Could you just expound on that? Explain a little more what you mean by that?
Well, you know, there's some very wonderful people in the DOJ at this point in time. People that are really not only really bright, but know how to get things done, and that are true and loyal to the cause, which is the cause of making America better. And some of them have, you know, a certain number of really great people that are working with them, but they haven't yet gotten the staff that they need, you know, to be able to make sure that everything gets implemented.
Yeah, and I do know that there's been somewhat of a, I won't say hiring freeze, but it's definitely a kind of administration-wide directive to be slow on hiring, as they kind of also weed out people. But then you run into these kind of situations right here where you need the support staff in order to, you know, take some action.
Yeah, in business, it's a general rule that hire, you know, fire fast, hire slow. And so in a way, we've got more business people in this administration that know how to make businesses work. And so if they apply these principles to government, it should make government work much better as well. And I can't blame them. What I do blame is that there's still so many people that are still in the works, not at the head anymore, but in the works. In other words, yeah, now we've changed the U.S. attorneys to be people that are not just going to weaponize government, but we still have assistant U.S. attorneys who still have cases going on, which are nothing less than weaponization of government, and they're getting away with it. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got, you know, one U.S. attorney may have 300 assistant U.S. attorneys underneath them. They can't watch and know everything about every single case, not right away. And, you know, but it's going to catch up to them. We're going to get those AUSAs out of government. These are not good people. These are the kinds of people that should be where they're putting other people.
and I have run into that situation in hearing about multiple different issues going on in the administration as it relates to the DOJ, and that's something we'll be covering more in depth in the coming days. Actually, Peter, so you kind of set up a preview for some reporting we have coming. Real quick before I let you go, and then I know we're going to catch back up with you tomorrow to see how it goes later today. But Peter, I have made the case, and I contend that Tina Peters is a federal whistleblower. She should be offered federal whistleblower status. Could that not come from Trump's DOJ? That could be something. I don't even feel like you should be having to file this writ of habeas corpus petition, because I feel like she should just be in protective custody by the federal government. Can you maybe explain why that isn't happening?
There are people in the federal government that agree exactly with your principle.
Okay.
I like Ed Martin, for instance, understands this and wants this to happen. The problem is that there needs to be a case that's being pursued in the federal government before they can act in ways that would basically empower them to come into the state. And I think that these things are coming about. We've got some wonderful people that realize how real the situation is. I mean, if you think about it, first of all, why was the trial judge so afraid to have Tina Peters tell her story, to get out there and tell what happened and have the freedom of speech? The reason for the fear is because she speaks the truth. If she's just lying, it'd be so easy not to have to worry about it. But they have to worry because she speaks the truth. And when she speaks the truth and tells the world that how the election in 2020 was fixed, which it was, and you're going to hear more about that, not just from me. You're going to be hearing from the government. You're going to be hearing from people like Tulsi Gabbard, I'm sure, Kristi Noem, people that know what we're fighting here. Because if the election was fixed, we know it wasn't fixed by Joe Biden. That man couldn't fix a flat tire. It's not a question of him fixing the election. It's a question of the people that pulled his strings that were fixing the election. So what we're looking at is something much, much bigger than most people are aware of. And when we look at somebody like Tina Peters and the people that know her and know what she did, call her a hero, it's not because of just a minor issue with a little skirmish that happened in regard to the election laws in the state of Colorado. This is far, far more important. This is keeping America. We lost it for 4 years. And I'm not just talking about Democrats versus Republicans. We lost it for 4 years to potentially foreign interests and wrongful characters that have basically took the election. If the election was stolen, it was stolen by criminals. It wasn't stolen by good people. Good people don't steal elections. So, what we're looking at is something much more scary than what most people would even imagine.
I agree with you, Peter. I do hope we hear from DNI Gabbard and Secretary Noem soon. It's much bigger than we realized in 2020. And it's not just America. This is global implications that Tina Peters stumbled upon and found herself in the middle of. And that is why she's such a target, as you said. I'll be listening into the hearing today. We'll catch up with you tomorrow on how it goes. And Godspeed, my friend.
Okay, thank you so much. And God bless you too.
All right, happening right now, President Donald Trump is meeting with the president of the Philippines in the Oval Office. Let's listen in for a moment. Oh, and just like that, he is gone. All right, so we won't get a chance to listen in. We will play some of that sound later. Now, in regards to that meeting with the Filipino president in the Oval Office, on the list of topics for discussion on the agenda were, of course, tariffs, but also China's growing aggression toward the Philippines. However, what you might not know, and you'll probably only see right here on LindellTV, is that this meeting comes at a very interesting time, okay? And it relates to what Peter Tickton was just speaking about in the case of Tina Peters and the threat to our constitutional republic. And as I added, many countries across the globe. There's much more below the surface of this meeting that should be discussed, like the Department of Justice's bribery and corruption case against 4 Smartmatic voting system executives for their bribery scheme in the Philippines. That trial is actually set to begin on October 1st in the Southern District of Florida. The witness list is due August 1st. That date is quickly approaching. Now, what particularly has come into focus is how taxpayer dollars have funded criminal cartel election rigging in multiple countries across the globe, like the Philippines. Now, this chart shows how money flowed through a NGO called SEBS to the tune of billions of dollars over a 10-year period to essentially put Smartmatic software in other countries like the Philippines, Ukraine, and then Dominion voting systems into Puerto Rico. Now, that is something that the president and his Filipino counterpart should discuss. How much will they discuss it, if at all? We don't know yet, but it certainly should be perhaps even the number one point of discussion today. And that's the absolute truth. We'll talk about that a little more later in the week. I'm going to do a deeper dive into this funding and where it went and how it was used. So stick around for that later in the week. In the meantime, the geoengineering in the skies weather modification has come into focus and now is an acceptable conversation to be had in the wake of massive flash flooding across the country. Steve Jarvis has gotten a lot of attention for his remarks on social media related to the topic. He's now working with HHS, and he'll join us next.
Swollen limbs, joint pain, inflammation, skin aging, and cognitive decline. These are just a few of the awful side effects that you can experience due to poor blood circulation. And popping ibuprofen is not a solution to the pain. It's only temporary relief, and it's only masking the true problem, which is inflammation. Researchers are saying to add this Antarctic super nutrient to your diet. I'm talking about omega-3 fatty acids, but not just any form of omegas. These particular omega-3 fatty acids are sourced from wild-caught krill. Has been shown to support healthy blood pressure, circulation, brain health, as well as reduce inflammation, swelling, and joint pain. For a limited time, you can grab Native Path Antarctic Krill Oil for up to 66% off plus free shipping. Just go to getkrill.com/Lindell right now to get your special offer.
I have a big announcement to make. My Clear Skies Act has been filed. This is my legislation to ban weather modification and geoengineering of all kinds. Finally, we can really take the fight in Washington to protect our skies, protect our water, protect our atmospheres, and most of all, protect our families. Thanks for your support, everyone. Look for my legislation, the Clear Skies Act.
Just look up at the sky and you'll probably see white lines crisscrossing over your head. There is not a place that I've been over the last decade that I haven't seen it. Those lines, we are told, are the contrails by passing aircraft. But what if it's something more? What if someone with a lot of money and a lot of power is paying for specialized aircraft to spray our skies with substances that make it rain? The recent horrific Texas flooding was preceded by a flight of cloud-seeding aircraft owned and operated by the Peter Thiel-backed firm Rainmaker, which was conducting operations near to where the flooding happened. The company's 25-year-old CEO, Augustus Dorico, categorically denies his firm was involved. But some states, such as Florida, are not taking any chances. Governor Ron DeSantis signed a law banning all weather modification programs in the Sunshine State and even issued a rather threatening directive to Florida airports that if they expect to continue receiving state funding for their operations, those airports were required to deny any aircraft seeking to use those airports as a base to launch cloud seeding operations in the state of Florida. Our next guest, Steve Jarvis, has become an expert in geoengineering and is himself part of the push to enact legislation banning all geoengineering activities over the United States. He's an Idaho-based regenerative farmer, as well as a leader in RFK Jr.'s Make America Healthy Again movement. And he joins us now. Steve, it's so great to meet you. So it's funny, I saw your video. It was so excellent. I put my booking producer on the hunt for your number, and then I'm having a conversation with, I will just say someone in the administration, and I brought up your name and we're like, oh, we're talking to that guy. He's amazing. So you have gotten a lot of attention. Are you surprised that now it's okay to talk about geoengineering and weather modification?
Well, I would say that Texas was the final straw. Everybody.
I would agree.
I blew the story. I'm the one that blew the story on Texas. And, I connected Peter Thiel with Rainmaker, and basically they just destroyed themselves. They admitted they sprayed 2 days before. And what everybody doesn't realize is there was 120 billion gallons of water dumped on a little bitty tiny area in just a matter of a few hours. That's double the amount of water that goes over Niagara Falls. Everybody knows that something's up, and we've been trying to say it for a long time.
What's amazing to me is how the Rainmaker CEO is out there on about every conservative show, platform, podcast, you name it, to try to do damage control, saying, oh, well, there was no way this was connected to our operations of cloud seeding 2 days before, that what we do is so minimal that it would never have that kind of effect. But at some point, you just have to say, it's just too coincidental otherwise. And in other flash flooding that we've seen across the country, there's also been reports of cloud seeding within the days leading up to massive flash flooding events. It's becoming a trend.
Yes. And see, I was invited. I wrote a farm plan for the United States of America called the United States of America Regenerative Small Farms and Food Act. And that would create 1 million new 40-acre farms. RFK invited me to come speak to Maha. And see, number one in my farm bill is stop geoengineering the weather, because we have high aluminum content, in our soil, in our water, and in many other areas. But that was the big thing, is I had no idea that I was going to be on your show and talk about this. And there are so many levels. There are 6 levels to geoengineering, and that's what people don't realize. I've just finished the bill for Montana. I just finished the bill for Idaho to stop weather modification. My bill, I called it the Mystic Bill after Camp Mystic, because this finally, 9 months ago, it was conspiracy theory, and now, everybody knows it's true, and they're coming out and admitting it. So I've named it the Mystic Bill after those girls that drowned, God bless them, at Camp Mystic. And my bill is the strongest bill in the nation. And there's 6 levels, and that's what so many people think, well, it's just a couple of things going on. But listen, folks, talk about going down the rabbit hole and going to deep dive. If you're on anxiety meds, you're going to double up to find out all the real information.
Can you give us a tease of that? Because I have been looking into this for, so probably the most intelligent person I knew put it on my radar in 2012. And to me, then it sounded, a bit overwhelming and sort of, like the plot of a sci-fi film. But the more I learned about it, the more I realized, and I knew because of who was telling me about it, who had been embedded in Silicon Valley, that it absolutely was true. I just hadn't heard about it. But this is a new topic for many people, even in my audience, right? Even though they're some of the most well-informed people you will find watching and consuming media. What of those rabbit hole items will people be shocked that they find out about? Just a couple items.
Okay, let me give you a big one. I'm trying to stop MTG. I tried to stop MTG from doing her bill. I know this sounds crazy.
The Clear Skies bill.
Yes, I've been trying to stop her. And the reason is because you have to understand, everybody, this is going to freak everybody out, but you got to look up the WMO. It's in Geneva, and we fund the WMO. Okay. Do you know what that is? the WMO. I know nobody does. And this is the problem. It is 99.9% impossible for Marjorie Taylor Greene to stop this, because if you wanted to stop this on a federal level, what you have to have President Trump, you have to have Vice President J.D. Vance, you have to have all 15 departments. Okay. You have to have HHS, USDA, NASA, NOAA, the Smithsonian, the NSF. I mean, all these 15 agencies. I know USAID is a big deal. They all blew the cover on a bunch of that. USAID is tons of money in here for weather modification. Under the National Science Foundation, there's $230 million given 2 colleges, 130 colleges every year to study geoengineering and weather. All this stuff has been behind the scenes. The WMO, we have to leave the WMO. The WMO is the World Meteorological Organization. We fund them. They're in Geneva. That should scare you. We also would have to leave the UN, and we'd have
So
to
many
also
bad organizations.
we have to leave NATO. NATO planes.
Yep.
Listen, folks, they're the newest, biggest, giant NATO plane. It was parked at Phoenix Airport right after the floods in Texas. I'm just trying to tell you. And NATO can fly anywhere over the United States. You can't do it. Not only do you have to have all those sign off and say we won't do this anymore, you got to do the military industrial complex. That means all generals, admirals, all leaders of military have to say they won't do it anymore. And you have to have the House and the Senate 2/3 majority to vote through. Do you think that's going to happen? Are we leaving NATO? Are we leaving the UN? No, it's not going to happen. I do have the answer though. We win this on the state level. That's the reason I pull back. Mm-hmm. I do work on the federal level. I'm in AgMaha. I do advise Secretary Kennedy. But what I want to say is that my Mystic bill for all 50 states is the toughest. And we can stop this at the state levels. And it's real simple. It's a lot to it. And you got to go a deep dive. And you're going to be shocked to find out everything that's in it. Listen, it's so deep. But main thing is you got to understand that cloud seeding plays a role. Airlines play a role. NATO plays a role. The Air Force plays a role. I hope y'all can handle this. NextRad plays a role. Balloons play a role. And cell towers. I know this is so heavy, but it's true. Your show is absolute truth. And if you want to get it depends how much of a drink you want. Do you want to just stay at cloud seeding, or do you want the entire fire hose?
But I think at this point people are so sick, right? And we have such chronic disease, and there's mm-hmm. multiple contributing factors. But I do genuinely believe this cloud seeding, besides the weather modification part, right? You mentioned the contaminants in the soil. As a farmer, as a regenerative farmer, mm-hmm. that is detrimental to our agriculture. Can you just speak on that a little bit so people understand why it's so important and why they should go find out more? Because I think you're right. Here's what we do. And a lot of times, especially as a national media, we're so focused on DC, right? The federal government and what we're doing there, when so much can be done in your particular state if you get active and you push your state legislature, right? You're still going to have the swamp there. You're still going to get pushback, but you have a better chance of success, in all honesty, at your state level. So tell us about the farming aspect of this and the agriculture aspect and how it affects our food.
Well, here's the thing. The reason I have it number one in my farm plan, we're going to rebuild the agrarian society and put in new farms. But if you're putting high levels of aluminum, Monsanto right now is working on seeds that can take high aluminum levels. You think that's just a coincidence? But these things, you cannot put 1 million farms in if you won't stop poisoning the soil. I have pictures of apple trees burn, blackberry plants burn, blueberry plants burn. I didn't get video of my beans last year, my green beans, not soybeans, but green beans. They turned completely yellow after I have a plane that was just at 15,000 feet. Yesterday, we had a big, I have the pictures of that, a plane at 9,900 right over us, just loops and loops and loops and loops and loops and loops. And you have to realize that this stuff is detrimental. Farming is already hard enough. It's already very expensive, the input cost. And if you don't stop this, I'd say by 2030, this is over. And the link to that is what people don't really realize is all this lab-grown food. That's where we're going. That's the reason they don't want the small farms. The reason they don't want the small farms is Big Ag just got $75 billion from Brooke Rollins. There's a lot I could say about that. But so Big Ag just got that money. But lab-grown chicken is approved by the FDA, lab-grown milk, lab-grown beef. And what you have to realize, tallow is a huge hit right now and has been for the last year. And I will tell you this, there is a lab in Spain that lab grows beef fat, pork fat, and chicken fat. And that is what you're going to see in the grocery store in the tallow section. It's all lab grown. Mm-hmm. And think about lab grown. Lab grown, you know what that means? If you got lab grown chicken, you don't need a chicken farm anymore.
Yeah. You're right. This is where we're going. Real quick, you also brought up Monsanto. There are multiple Monsanto immunity bills that are being pushed in state legislatures right now. There's a big one that was on the agenda for today for voting in our U.S. Congress. I imagine you have some very strong thoughts about these bills, immunity bills for Monsanto Bayer.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I've tried to stay out of the Monsanto Bayer pesticide fight. And the reason that I did try to stay out of this fight is because my farm plan, we don't use those products. You see what I'm saying? If you recreate 1 million new farms, and we're importing 25% of our food. I mean, we could starve to death, if other nations really mounted against us. But my farm plan doesn't use those. I don't use them. I farm about 10 acres. I have an online farm school, sas-usa.com. Have an online farm school. And in my farm plan and in my processing plan, my processing team, they already build processing centers for food. We would build 10,000 new processing centers a year. None of those facilities will process any genetically modified foods, vaccinated meats, milk that's shot up with different things, and foods that don't have these things in it. And that's why I've tried to stay out of that fight, because my farm plan let big ag use those chemicals if they want to. And I will tell you this, the farmers got shoved into this. They're trapped. A lot of these farmers want to do it, but they are trapped, folks. I have a plan for the big farms as well on how to walk out of that. And that's the thing. What I'm trying to tell everybody is everybody screams. I do. I influence about 1 million people every few days. But everybody's screaming. But what I did is I started writing solutions down. How do we fix this? And that's what I've done.
And that's what we need. We need solutions. I'm happy. And I'm happy to know that you do have the ear of, RFK Jr., you have the ear of some important people in the administration, and hopefully we can get this done. But folks, it also takes a state level, right? You're talking to the federal government, but they're all across the country. You got to get involved at the state level. And then also consider being a farmer, a regenerative farmer. Steve has his online school, SAS/USA.com, or -USA.com. I'm going to go there and check it out. I one day hope to have at least a 10-acre farm myself. Steve, it's good to see you. Well, we're going to have you back. We're going to keep this conversation going because it's an important one to have. And especially now that we can have it and it doesn't seem so taboo and more people are willing to listen and understand the challenges we're facing because of these multilateral institutions. And as you noted, it's not one. It's a whack-a-mole, right? You take one down, you're having to whack the other one. It's good to see you, Steve.
Listen, breaking news, biggest news ever coming out. You're going to break the news on Friday, Emerald. Biggest news, folks. I can't tell you what it is. I'm going to love it.
Join us again on Friday and tell your friends to be right here for some big news from Steve Jarvis. It's good to see you. We'll see you Friday.
Thank you. Bye.
As we said, the fight against Monsanto continues. We have an update on that with Brianna Sagler after the break.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at NirvantaHealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to NirvantaHealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
You just heard Steve Jarvis talking about big agriculture While America's corrupt, big businesses are at it again after the U.S. government granted Big Pharma liability shields for their clot shots during the COVID-19 pandemic. Here comes Bayer Monsanto with their push to get immunity for all their potentially poisonous products. Our next guest, Brianna Sagdahl, recently tweeted this, saying, quote, Section 453 of the Federal House Interior Appropriations Bill has total pesticide immunity language included in it. It would also immediately impede the 67,000 pending lawsuits claiming Monsanto Bayer Roundup caused cancer. But wait, there is more. The bill also prohibits the use of any EPA funds to finalize, implement, administer, or enforce the agency's draft assessment on two harmful types of per and polyfluoroalkyl, forgive me for not being able to say that, substances that are known to be contaminating farms, ranches, and dairies around the country. And as if this congressional bill wasn't enough, just for good measure, Bayer Monsanto has almost a dozen state legislatures pushing bills that will provide similar liability shields for the producers of these possibly dangerous chemical substances that are used so regularly on foodstuffs. So obviously Monsanto understands how important the state level is as well. I'm now joined by Brianna Sagdahl. She's a senior writer and research fellow at the ITAS Foundation. And Brianna, I know that you spoke yesterday with my colleague, Allison Steinberg, because this is a very important bill. What Allison, who was reporting from the White House, pointed out is that they actually use Roundup at the White House. So it has penetrated even the highest level of our government.
Well, it's used often. And, you know, what's interesting, your prior guest was talking about how, for example, state level legislation can be incredibly powerful, which is true unless there are federal level laws that preempt the state. So, for example, with chemtrails or geoengineering, there's not a federal body of law that preempts states' rights. So the state level is the place to fight that battle. When it comes to the EPA and how it regulates pesticides, though, this is definitely a federal level battle. And if Monsanto Bayer or Syngenta Group, for example, which makes dicot, paraquat, if they can achieve legal immunity at the federal level, then constitutional rights at the state level suddenly become much more difficult to exercise, Emerald.
That's an important clarification. Now, I believe it's just hard to believe that we would even consider giving immunity to a company like this who can put whatever they want in their product. It can have any kind of detrimental effect. Obviously, there's so many lawsuits about people developing cancer from the use of Roundup, right? And, you know, this is a fight that RFK Jr. has personally been involved in, fighting against this. So it's kind of surreal that any lawmaker, whether state or federal, would consider giving immunity for substances like this. I believe that the House was set to vote on the particular federal bill we shared language from. Do we know if that's still happening today? I looked on the list and I didn't see it, but it's possible I just missed it.
So they are currently in debates now, and the chair announced this morning when they opened the hearing at 10:30 that they will go all day if needed and vote on the bill tomorrow morning. So there's a lot to get through. Both Republicans and Democrats have issues within the bill, and I believe that there will be an amendment that's pushed forward today to remove Section 453, which is the essentially the language that would prohibit the EPA from using funds to regulate or to otherwise label pesticides. Then Section 507 would prohibit the EPA from using funds from acting on a most recent EPA study that identified the toxic sludge, like you're talking about, the PFAS or PFOAS for short, which are essentially forever chemicals that have taken many, many lands across the country out of productive use.
Which lawmaker is going to introduce the amendment? Do you know?
I believe it's one of the ranking members, and that that chairs the committee. So we'll see what happens, and we are going to be paying attention all day long and look forward to give you guys an update on that. One thing to note, Emerald, just so your audience knows, your audience is incredible. They have been getting calls nonstop, calls and emails. So thank you. And we're also hearing that some staffers are telling people that this would not create any type of immunity. So there's a little bit of misinformation happening. It's important to understand how the law works. And in order to do that, I would encourage people to visit doortofreedom.org. There's an FAQ on FIFRA, which is the body of law that governs pesticide regulation. And then look at Stand for Health Freedom, which is another organization that is thoroughly explained this. And there's also an email campaign as part of Stand for Health Freedom. So if people have any questions, you can reach out and make sure to check out those websites as well.
You know what? I have heard from many staffers in Congress that we have one of the most active audiences. And so that's one reason they will watch the show, to kind of know what they're going to get hit with. Because when we talk about something, they do get the calls, particularly Congressman Jim Jordan's office. So it's funny that you say that, and that's good to hear, because I was going to ask you, how much public pressure are they getting? Enough public pressure? So you've covered that. So keep calling, folks. Second question, my last question, actually, RFK has been. I actually remember listening to RFK in person at an event in 2024, early 2024, when he was still a presidential candidate. And actually the Monsanto issue came up, and he spoke at length on it and how he felt about it and the fight against the pesticides and the cancer-causing agents. What has he been like? How much of an advocate is he against this immunity as now a member of the Trump administration, and in general, and then as a whole, how involved is the Trump administration in the fight against immunity, or either supporting immunity for these companies? Because I would imagine there might be some daylight between, say, Secretary Kennedy and Secretary Brooke Rollins.
Well, I don't know that there's a ton of daylight between Rollins and RFK Jr. You know, honestly, this is not coming from the executive branch. This legislation is coming from Congress, potentially from staffers. And, you know, we're not exactly sure who introduced the legislation, but the members of the committee have been very careful and very specific in thanking the staffers for writing the bill. So nobody's really taking responsibility for it. And I think it's such a hot potato at this point that nobody really wants to support it, which is fantastic, because it shows how important the Trump administration has made the MAHA movement. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful for this administration. So we're hoping that these members of Congress will advance the president's America First agenda and make sure that foreign-owned chemical corporations are not being given immunity from the American people.
Yeah, you know, it just shows too how important public pressure is. And I learned that during the first administration. They listen to the people who yell the loudest. And that's often what liberals do very well, or, you know, people that I usually don't ideologically probably align with. But I think with the MAGA coalition, people have learned to use their voices more. And that's been such a great benefit of this coalition. And I hope in this case that they're effective. We'll be watching out today to see if Amendment 453 is removed. We will report back to our audience tomorrow. We'll keep you posted on if the vote happens, what happens with this, because this is very, very important. And I know it matters to, particularly, obviously, it matters to a lot of this people in this audience, and the staff in Congress are hearing about it. So we're glad to hear that. Thank you so much, Brianna. It's good to catch up with you. And we'll talk soon about how this resolves itself.
Thank you so much for having me back on. Emerald, you're wonderful. So grateful for the LindellTV network.
Thanks, Brianna. Up next, Florida continues to lead the way against the mRNA jabs. What the Florida Surgeon General said recently, and Pierre Corey, who was by his side when he said it, joins us next after the break.
With everybody talking about making America healthy again, I thought today'd be a great day to talk to all my fellow patriots about the importance of making your homes healthy again. Well, we have proudly partnered with airwaterhealing.com and their revolutionary whole home air purification system. The V3 from Air Water Healing does 3,000 square feet of purification. It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors. But here's the part I love. They require no filters to ever be changed and virtually no maintenance. Whether you suffer from asthma, allergies, seasonal bronchitis, or just want to protect your family from the flu or even greater threats, don't wait to get your V3 from airwaterhealing.com today. Use code Lindell for 20% off in savings and free shipping. That's promo code Lindell at airwaterhealing.com.
Very fortunately, very few people, very few children, and very few adults are putting these mRNA COVID-19 vaccines in their bodies. We still have older people doing it, but fewer people who are older are doing it also. And they shouldn't be doing it because they are not fit for human use. When was the last time that you had a vaccine that literally almost every single person knows someone who's had a bad reaction for them? Okay, I've been a physician with my MD since 2011, and I've taken care of many patients, Boston, Los Angeles, and in Florida. I also see patients in the county health department from time to time. I have seen, until this pandemic, I could not tell you someone I knew individually who I was confident was actually injured from a vaccine.
That's the Florida Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo making a history-making announcement. Now, this move comes after the Trump administration's health team, led by RFK Jr., removed the COVID-19 jab from the required vaccination schedules of women and small children.
I couldn't be more pleased to announce that as of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today.
And it couldn't come at a better time, seeing as there is a growing consensus among defense experts and medical experts that the COVID-19 quote-unquote vaccine was in fact a literal bioweapon. This is why our friend Dr. Joseph Sandstone has been on the front lines of fighting to get the courts to legally recognize the so-called vaccines that are actually poisonous because they are bioweapons. And let us not forget that the Maha Commission report that was issued last month proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Biden regime knew full well that there were serious side effects to the COVID-19 mRNA jabs, and yet they continued with the vaccine mandates for Americans and actively covered the truth up of what one would say might have even been the intended side effects. I'm now joined by Dr. Pierre Kory. He was present at Florida Surgeon General Ladapo's statement last week. He's the author of the book, The War on Ivermectin, the medicine that saved millions and could have ended the pandemic. Dr. Kory, it's great to see you. Joseph Ladapo is a national treasure. Unfortunately, there's not more like him across the country. Can you just talk about the implications of what I think is a historical announcement on the part of the Florida Surgeon General?
Yeah, Florida's led the way, in terms of this, I'm just going to use the word totalitarian healthcare policies, which were devoid of science or supportive data. Joe really led the charge in terms of, and when you have these captured federal agencies that are literally dictating national policy, we need states to fight back, right? And Joe's led the way. I think, you talked about historic. I think it's historic if other states follow suit. And we've seen that before. The things that Florida's done, other states have followed. And now with Bobby in charge, taking it off the recommended schedule, I think there's going to be some momentum here fighting back and really addressing what you just talked about, which is the suppression of adverse events, the toxicity and lethality of these mRNA vaccines. It's one of the most horrific, I think, cover-ups or secrets in public health history, and it's ongoing. I mean, they're still suppressing that, and I think Joe's calling it out, and I was there with them, and I'm proud to speak truth to people to help them make informed decisions because, again, we've been lied to, and it has to stop.
We have been lied to. You're right. It is historic if it has a domino effect, and we see other states follow suit. Now, one of those states could be the state of Montana, correct?
Yep.
Who has given some indications that they want to end the jab. Where are we there with Montana?
Sorry, you're asking me a question. I'm not sure where we are. I know that they've made some moves. There were some really impressive bills that were being proposed, and I know they passed one. And I think to stop mRNA, and I know other states had some pending legislation. So there definitely seems to be evidence of, like you said, a little bit of a groundswell. But I think we got to keep up the pressure.
Let's go back to Florida then. The Surgeon General says that these are not fit for human use, right? Literally, almost every single person knows someone who had a bad reaction to them, and that's true. Even people who still support and even go get their 5th, 6th, 7th booster will even say, well, yeah, I know, yes, I know this person had this effect, or even I have lost use of the right side of my body, but, the shots work. They keep you, from dying of COVID because they're just so, But even they admit they know 1, 2, 5 people who have either had an adverse event or even died from it. But why? I mean, Latipo is saying no one should get them, but he's stopping short of actually. Would it take the governor to pull them off the shelves in Florida? We're not at the point yet in Florida where they're actually going to be pulled from the market in the state, right?
True. I don't know that they have the authority to do that, right? They're public health agencies which can provide guidance. I don't know that they have the legal authority to pull things off the market. I think really only FDA does. But still, those recommendations are important. And, what you just talked about, if you're asking me to make it make sense, people's behaviors, I can't. I can point you to the reason why their behaviors don't make sense. And I'm sorry to always beat this drum, but it's this unrelenting propaganda and censorship, which is causing people to think and act in certain ways that don't make sense. One of the most absurd examples is people have recounted anecdotes of being online at pharmacies to get these COVID mRNA vaccines. Someone comes out and collapses, and the line doesn't collapse. People stay online and they continue to go in. I mean, the evidence of harm with these things, like you said, most of the country knows someone severely injured. My entire practice now for 3.5 years is treating innumerable COVID-19 vaccines. I have an entire practice of it, and they're some of the sickest, most complex patients I've ever seen.
Some people were disappointed many people are disappointed, and we talk about it regularly on the show, that the Trump FDA has not pulled the shots off the market. As you noted, it would probably take that effort. In fact, most recently, they approved another jab, the Moderna COVID jab for children ages 6 months to 12 years old. That got a lot of pushback, and talking with people internally, they said, well, yeah, but it stopped, I think a total of 3 shots being approved. There was some kind of caveat to say it could have been worse. We stopped it from being so bad. But given that Secretary Kennedy's in charge, and that it's Trump in charge now, what is stopping them from just pulling the jabs off the market?
I think I'm glad you asked that question. I can give you my understanding. I work pretty closely with folks that are very experienced in Washington. And my sense is that the general sort of MAHA movement does not understand the limits of a political appointee. People use the deep state or the bureaucracy or whatever, but that public health infrastructure and bureaucracy, there's policies, procedures, there's approval, sort of pipelines. That doesn't change. You can't have an administration come in and upend decades of regulatory infrastructure and framework. So these approvals, which makes Bobby look bad as if he's approving them, that was a process that started way before Trump or RFK Jr. came into office. The regulatory approval process just ended while they were in power. They have no ability to stop or interrupt or upend that process. So although, yes, they did finally meet approval, that's because they met all of the approval requirements and checkpoints. Now, whether you agree with those approval processes, we don't, right? Because we consistently see harmful drugs, devices, and vaccines that somehow fly through that process. To change that would require immense political effort and will, and really a change to our regulatory system. And until that happens, I think Trump and RFK Jr. are relatively powerless to stop it. What they can do is what Bobby did. He can stop recommending it.
So is Bobby Secretary Kennedy working on changing that regulatory system? Because as you said, I mean, that approval process, you and I know, is a joke. There's no way that COVID jab would have gotten through with a rigorous, real process.
Yep. And I hope that's one of the things he's doing. Again, what his powers are to do that, or how much political capital or bureaucratic capital he has. Remember, it's such a massive beast, the HHS, and how it works. And I don't know what congressional input, whether he needs Congress to change some of those things. Again, I'm not a political scientist, but I do know that would be the key point to make lasting change to protecting us from, like you said, these things flying through their regulatory approval processes, because we know that they put crap out on the market that's not sufficiently tested, that's not safe, and that is marketed as such.
Well, the Pfizer documents explicitly told you that. So, I mean, that's what we have to do. There's no way we can continue on with this status quo and approving what I say is a bioweapon. I won't put words in your mouth, but a bioweapon that has killed many, many people and had serious adverse effects for others. But I do think, I would agree, though, that, you know, there is some good countering going on that we don't hear a lot about. And I have mentioned to people at HHS, look, it looks bad from the outside, and I'm friendly, and it looks bad. So you need to be letting us know a little bit more of what's going on. I understand you don't want to give away a lot of strategy, but you have to kind of talk to people and let them know why you're doing this, because on the outside, it just looks like you're reneging, that you're catering to the pressure. So I think they do have a messaging issue as well, because it's better to hear you explain it, Dr. Corey. And all.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said, Emerald. That you're right. I don't think that I think you just nailed it on the head, because I got to tell you, I have a lot of colleagues, a lot of people I work with. They're up in arms and they're angry at Bobby, and I'm like, Bobby's doing the best he can, man. He's up against limits. But you're right. I think they should message that they're doing everything they can, but there's limits to their authority and power.
You know what? I think we might see a change over the next few weeks. I think they are now getting that message. So we'll see. But thank you so much, Dr. Corey. It's always good to talk to you. We hadn't caught up in a while. Thanks for joining us today.
Been a while. Pleasure to see you. I'm going to keep going. Keep doing what you're doing.
You too. Thanks. So we didn't get to the press conference in the Oval Office in time a little earlier in the show, and I promised that I would revisit it later in the show. I want to bring you what is probably the most explosive comment given by the president in that press availability as it relates to his predecessor for his 45th term, Barack Obama. Listen.
The witch hunt that you should be talking about is they caught President Obama absolutely cold, Tulsi Gabbard. What they did to this country in 2016, starting in 2016, but going up to 2020 in the election. They tried to rig the election, and they got caught. And there should be very severe consequences for that. You know, when we caught Hillary Clinton, I said, you know what? Let's not go too far here. It's the ex-wife of a president, and I thought it was sort of terrible. And I let her off the hook, and I'm very happy I did. But it's time to start, after what they did to me, and whether it's right or wrong, it's time to go after people. Obama's been caught directly. So people say, oh, you know, a group. It's not a group. It's Obama. His orders are on the paper. The papers are signed. The papers came right out of their office. They sent everything to be highly classified. Well, the highly classified's been released. And what they did in 2016 and in 2020 is very criminal. It's criminal at the highest level. So that's really the things you should be talking about. No, Barack Hussein Obama is the ringleader. Hillary Clinton was right there with him, and so was Sleepy Joe Biden. And so were the rest of them. Comey, Clapper, the whole group. And they tried to rig an election, and they got caught. And then they did rig the election in 2020. And then because I knew I won that election by a lot, I did it a third time, and I won in a landslide. Every swing state won the popular vote. But I won that all the same way in 2020. And look at the damage that was caused.
President saying there should be consequences against these deep state actors, Obama, Brennan, Comey, but will there be? We'll believe it when arrests have been made. In the meantime, you can support this reporting and everything you see here at LindellTV. We've had some good action over the last couple of days, if you heard, by Brianna Sagdahl. That's brought directly to you from the good folks at MyPillow.com. Go to MyPillow.com and use the promo code TRUTH, and that's the absolute truth. DC Live with Allison Steinberg is next. Stick around.